Captain Zektar was having a normal day when everything changed. He was sitting in his chair on the bridge of his ship, the Silent Tide. The ship was not big or fancy. It was just a simple trading vessel that carried goods from one planet to another. Zektar had been doing this job for 20 years, and he liked the quiet life. His ship was flying through the Kepler Belt, a place where many old ships and space junk floated around. Most captains avoided this area because it was dangerous. But Zektar knew the safe paths through the debris. He had traveled this route many times before. "Captain," called out his scanner officer Rinda. She was a young Vorthan with bright green skin and large eyes. "I am picking up something strange." Zektar leaned forward in his chair. "What kind of strange?" "It looks like a small ship, but it is not moving. And—" Rinda paused as she checked her readings again. "It is sending out a distress signal." The Vorthans were known throughout the galaxy as peaceful traders. They did not fight wars or take sides in conflicts. They just moved goods from one place to another and tried to help anyone who needed it. This was their way of life. "Put it on the main screen," Zektar ordered. The front window of the bridge changed to show what their cameras could see. There, floating among the broken pieces of metal and rock, was a small escape pod. It was badly damaged. Burn marks covered its hull, and one side was completely smashed in. "Life signs?" asked Zektar. Rinda worked at her controls. "Yes, Captain. One person inside. The readings are weak, but they are alive." Zektar did not need to think about it. The choice was simple. Someone needed help, and the Vorthans would help them. This was who they were. "Bring us closer," he told his pilot. "Prepare the cargo bay for docking." The Silent Tide moved slowly through the debris field. Zektar watched as pieces of destroyed ships floated past their windows. Some of the wreckage was recent. The metal was still hot from weapon fire. This told him that a battle had happened here not long ago. "Captain," said his engineer Corvin over the communication system, "the escape pod's power is almost gone. If we do not get them soon, their life support will fail. How long do they have?" Zektar asked. "Maybe 30 minutes. No more." Zektar felt his heart beat faster. 30 minutes was not much time. But his crew was good at their jobs. They would save whoever was in that pod. The pilot, Valanak, was the best in the fleet. He guided the Silent Tide through the floating debris like it was easy. Soon, they were close enough to the escape pod to use their tractor beam. "Locking on now," said Valanak. "Got it." Bringing them into the cargo bay. Zektar left the bridge and walked to the cargo bay. His medical officer, Dr. Myra Velshi, was already there with her equipment. She was a kind woman who had saved many lives over the years. "What do we know about who is inside?" she asked Zektar. "Nothing yet. The pod is too damaged to get a clear scan." They watched as the escape pod was pulled into the cargo bay. The big doors closed and air was pumped into the room. When it was safe, they walked over to the pod. The escape pod was in worse shape than it had looked from far away. The hull was cracked in many places. Burn marks showed where enemy weapons had hit it. Someone had tried very hard to destroy this pod, and whoever was inside Dr. Velshi used her tools to open the pod's door. It took several minutes because the door was bent and damaged. When it finally opened, they saw a human male inside. He was young, maybe 25 or 30 years. Old. His hair was brown, and his skin was pale. He was unconscious and breathing slowly. His clothes were torn, and dried blood covered his face and hands. "Human," said Dr. Velshi as she scanned him with her medical equipment. "Male, severe injuries. We need to get him to the medical bay right away." They carefully moved the human to a medical bed and took him to Dr. Velshi's medical bay. As they worked, Zektar looked at the damaged escape pod. Something bothered him about it. The pod was from a human ship, but not just any ship. The design was military, not civilian. The weapons damage was also strange. It looked like the pod had been attacked by Krillian weapons, but the pattern was wrong. It was as if someone had tried to make it look like a Krillian attack, but Zektar pushed these thoughts away. Right now, the important thing was saving the human's life. Questions could wait. In the medical bay, Dr. Velshi worked for hours to help the human. His injuries were serious. He had radiation poisoning from his ship's damaged reactor. His body showed signs of decompression, which happened when a ship lost air pressure too quickly. But there were other marks too. Marks that looked like someone had hurt him on purpose. "Will he live?" Zektar asked. "Yes," said Dr. Velshi. "But it will take time. Days, maybe weeks. He has been through something terrible." That night, as the silent tide continued on its route, Zektar sat in his quarters thinking. Humans were not common in this part of space. They were traders and explorers, mostly. Peaceful people, like the Vorthans. What had this human been doing? In the Kepler belt? And who had tried to kill him? The next morning, the human woke up. His eyes opened slowly, and he looked around the medical bay with confusion. "Where am I?" he asked in a weak voice. Dr. Velshi was checking his vital signs. "You are safe. You are on a Vorthan trading ship. We found you in an escape pod." The human tried to sit up, but Dr. Velshi gently pushed him back down. "Rest. You are badly injured." "My name is Jake Collins," the human said. "I was on a survey ship. We were attacked." "By who?" asked Dr. Velshi. Jake closed his eyes. "Krillian raiders. They came out of nowhere. My ship. Everyone else." He did not finish the sentence. Dr. Velshi felt sorry for him. The Krillians were known to be violent. They attacked ships and took what they wanted. Many good people had died because of them. "You are the only survivor," she told Jake gently. "But you are safe now. We will take care of you." Jake looked at her with grateful eyes. "Thank you. I do not know how to repay you." "No need for repayment," said Dr. Velshi. "We help because it is right." Captain Zektar came to visit Jake later that day. The human was stronger now, able to sit up and talk more easily. "I am Captain Zektar," he said. "Welcome aboard the Silent Tide." "Jake Collins," the human replied. "Thank you for saving me, Captain. I thought I was going to die in that pod." "What were you doing in the Kepler belt?" Zektar asked. "It is not a safe place for survey ships." Jake's face became sad. "We were looking for rare minerals. There are rumors of valuable deposits in the asteroid field. My company sent us to check if the rumors were true. And the Krillians found you." "Yes, they destroyed my ship and tried to kill me. I barely made it to the escape pod." Jake paused. "Captain, where are you taking me?" "We are traders," Zektar explained. "We travel from system to system. We can drop you off at any space station where you can find transport back to human space." "That would be wonderful," Jake said. "Again, thank you. Your kindness means everything to me." Zektar smiled. This was why he loved being Vorthan. They helped people because it was the right thing to do. They asked for nothing in return except the knowledge that they had done good. As the days passed, Jake got stronger. He was polite and grateful. He helped with small tasks around the ship when Dr. Velshi said it was okay. The crew liked him. He told them stories about Earth and human culture. But sometimes, when Zektar looked at Jake, he felt that something was not quite right. He could not explain what it was. Maybe it was the way Jake asked questions about their ship and their route. Or maybe it was how Jake seemed to remember every detail of their conversations. Zektar told himself he was being foolish. Jake was just curious and grateful. There was nothing wrong with that. The human had been through a terrible experience. Of course he would be interested in his rescuers. Still, the feeling stayed with Zektar. Something about Jake Collins bothered him, even though he could not say what it was. 3 weeks had passed since Jake Collins came aboard the Silent Tide. The human had recovered well from his injuries. Dr. Velshi said he was healthy enough to do light work around the ship. Jake was happy to help. He said it made him feel useful. Again, the Vorthan crew had grown to like their human guest. Jake was always polite and helpful. He never complained about anything. When they gave him simple food, he said it was delicious. When they showed him to his small quarters, he said it was perfect. Chief Engineer Corvin was especially impressed with Jake. The humans seemed to understand their ship systems very well. When Corvin explained how their quantum drive worked, Jake asked smart questions. He even suggested a small improvement that made the drive run more smoothly. "How do you know so much about quantum drives?" Corvin asked one day as they worked. Together in the engine room, Jake smiled. "I studied engineering before I became a surveyor. I have always been interested in how things work." "You are very smart," said Corvin. "Your suggestions have been very helpful." Jake seemed pleased by the compliment. "I am glad I can help. After all you have done for me, it is the least I can do." But Jake was doing more than just helping with repairs. When no one was looking, he was studying the ship very carefully. He memorized the layout of every room. He learned how the weapon systems worked, even though the Silent Tide only had basic defensive equipment. He watched how the crew did their jobs and made mental notes about everything. At night, when the crew was sleeping, Jake would walk around the ship. He told anyone who asked that he could not sleep well and that walking helped him. This was partly true. Jake did have trouble sleeping, but he also used this time to learn more about the ship. He found the main computer system and learned how to access the ship's records. He was careful not to leave any trace of what he was doing. The Vorthans trusted him, and their computer security was not very strong. They had no reason to think their guest would spy on them. Jake learned about the Silent Tide's trade routes. He saw which planets they visited and what goods they carried. He learned about Vorthan colonies and their defenses. He discovered that the Vorthans had very little military protection. They relied on their reputation as peaceful traders to keep them safe. This information was very valuable. Jake made sure to remember every detail. During the day, Jake spent time with different crew members. He was genuinely interested in learning about Vorthan culture. The crew was happy to share their stories with him. Captain Zektar often invited Jake to eat meals with him. They would sit in the captain's quarters and talk about many things. Jake told stories about Earth and human colonies. He talked about great cities and beautiful landscapes. He described human art and music. "Humans sound like a creative people," said Zektar during one of these meals. "We are," Jake agreed, "but we are also practical. We have learned to survive in difficult places. Space is not always kind to explorers." "This is true," said Zektar. "We Vorthans have been lucky. We have avoided most conflicts. Our neutrality has served us well." Jake nodded. "Neutrality is wise, but sometimes the galaxy does not let you stay neutral. Sometimes others make choices for you." Zektar looked at Jake with interest. "You sound like you have experience with such things?" Jake's expression became serious. "Every human has learned hard lessons about survival. Space is full of dangers. Pirates, hostile aliens, equipment failures. We have learned to be ready for anything." "But humans are not warlike, are they?" asked Zektar. "In the trade stations they seem peaceful. We prefer peace," Jake said carefully. "But we are not helpless. When we must fight, We fight well. These conversations gave Jake more useful information. He learned that the Vorthans knew very little about human military capabilities. They saw humans as just another trading species. This was exactly what Jake had hoped to learn. Jake also spent time with the ship's communications officer, Linsa. She was young and eager to practice her human languages. Jake helped her improve her English, and she taught him some Vorthan phrases. "Why do humans spread out so much?" Linsa asked one day. "Most species stay close to their home worlds. Humans are curious," Jake explained. "We want to see what is beyond the next star. It is part of our nature. But it must be lonely, being so far from home." Jake smiled sadly. "Sometimes, but we adapt. Humans are good at adapting." During these language lessons, Jake learned about Vorthan communication systems. He discovered how they sent messages between ships and colonies. He learned their communication codes and frequencies. All of this information went into his memory for later use. When they stopped at trade stations, Jake always asked to go along. He said he wanted to see different alien cultures. The crew thought this was natural curiosity. They did not know that. Jake was studying the defenses of each station they visited. At Nexus Station, a large trading hub, Jake spent hours walking around and observing. He counted the security ships. He noted the weapon emplacements. He watched how cargo was moved and stored. He even managed to access a public computer terminal and download star charts of the local area. When they returned to the Silent Tide, Jake seemed excited about what he had seen. "Such an interesting mix of species," he told Captain Zektar. "I have never seen so many different aliens in one place." "Nexus Station is famous for its diversity," Zektar agreed. "Traders from across the galaxy come here." "How do they keep the peace with so many different groups?" Jake asked. "The station has strong security," Zektar explained. "And most traders want to do business, not cause trouble. Fighting is bad for profits." Jake nodded thoughtfully. "That makes sense. Commerce brings peace." But Jake was thinking about something else. He was thinking about how easy it would be to disrupt that peace if someone wanted to. The station's defenses were good against pirates and criminals, but they were not designed to fight a real military force. As the weeks passed, Jake became more integrated into the ship's routine. The crew treated him like family. They shared their food, their stories, and their friendship. Jake seemed to appreciate this kindness. He often thanked them for their generosity. But Jake was also becoming more focused on his real mission. He had gathered much information about Vorthan space. He had learned about their trade routes, their colonies, and their defenses. He had studied their technology and their culture. Now he needed to send this information to his superiors. Jake was careful about how he communicated with his handlers. He used public communication terminals at space stations. His messages looked like personal letters to friends and family back home. But they were actually detailed intelligence reports written in code. One such message read, "Dear Mom, I am doing well aboard this trading ship. The crew is very kind. They have shown me many interesting places. The people here are very trusting and peaceful. I think you would like them. I hope to see you soon. Love, Jake." To anyone reading it, this looked like a normal message from a rescued human to his family. But Jake's handlers would understand the real meaning. The message told them about Vorthan defenses, population centers, and military capabilities. It confirmed that the Vorthans were exactly as vulnerable as intelligence had suggested. Captain Zektar noticed that Jake seemed different lately. The human was still friendly and helpful, but there was something else in his behavior. Jake asked more questions about their route and their destinations. He seemed very interested in the cargo they carried and the planets they visited. "Jake has been asking many questions about our trade," Zektar mentioned to Dr. Velshi one day. "He is curious about our way of life," she replied. This is natural. He has been away from his own people for a long time. Perhaps, said Zektar, but he was not entirely convinced. One night, Zektar could not sleep. He decided to walk around the ship to clear his mind. As he walked through the corridors, he saw Jake at a computer terminal in the common area. The human was working intently, his fingers moving quickly over the controls. When Jake noticed Zektar approaching, he quickly closed whatever he had been working on. Captain, he said with a smile, I could not sleep either. What were you doing? Zektar asked. Just reading about Vorthan history, Jake replied. Your culture is fascinating. I am learning about your early space exploration. Zektar looked at the computer screen. It showed a basic article about Vorthan history. But something felt wrong. The screen had changed too quickly when Jake closed his previous work. It is late, Zektar said. You should try to get some rest. You are right, Jake agreed. Good night, Captain. As Jake walked away, Zektar stayed at the computer terminal. He tried to see what Jake had been working on before, but there was no record of it. Either Jake had been telling the truth, or he was very good at hiding his activities. Zektar's unease grew stronger. He could not shake the feeling that something was not right about their human guest. But what could he do? Jake had done nothing wrong. He was helpful, polite, and grateful. The crew liked him. There was no reason to suspect him of anything. Still, Zektar decided to watch Jake more closely. If the human was hiding something, the captain would find out what it was. 2 months had passed since Jake Collins first came aboard the Silent Tide. The human had become like family to the crew. They had shared meals, stories, and friendship. But now Jake said it was time for him to leave. I have received word from my company, Jake told Captain Zektar. They are sending a ship to pick me up at Kepler Station. I should be there in 3 days. Zektar felt sad to hear this news. Despite his strange feelings about Jake, he had grown to like the human. We will miss you, he said honestly. I will miss all of you too, Jake replied. You saved my life and gave me a home when I had nothing. I will never forget your kindness. The crew spent Jake's last few days aboard the ship, making sure he had everything he needed. Dr. Velshi gave him medical supplies in case he had any problems. Chief Engineer Corvin gave him a small toolkit that might be useful. Even young Linsa gave him a translation device to help him communicate with other species. Jake seemed very grateful for all these gifts, but he also seemed different, more focused, more serious. He spent long hours alone in his quarters, and when he came out, he looked like a man who had made important decisions. On his last night aboard the Silent Tide, Jake asked to speak with each crew member privately. He thanked them all for their help and friendship, but he also gave each of them a small gift. To Captain Zektar, he gave a metal sculpture of a bird in flight. This represents freedom, Jake explained. You gave me my freedom when you rescued me. To Dr. Velshi, he gave a sculpture of healing hands. For the doctor who saved my life. To Chief Engineer Corvin, he gave a sculpture of gears and machinery. For the engineer who taught me so much about your technology. To each crew member, Jake gave a personal gift. The sculptures were beautiful and detailed. Jake said he had made them himself during his recovery, using scrap metal from the ship's workshop. You are very talented, said Captain Zektar as he examined his gift. These are works of art. I learned metalworking from my father, Jake explained. It helps me think and remember happy times. The crew was touched by Jake's thoughtfulness. They displayed their gifts proudly in their quarters. They were beautiful reminders of their human friend and the good deed they had done by rescuing him. The next morning, the Silent Tide arrived at Kepler Station. The station was busy with ships coming and going. Traders from many species conducted business here. It was the perfect place for Jake to find transportation back to human space. Jake packed his few belongings, and prepared to leave. The crew gathered in the cargo bay to say goodbye. There were tears in some eyes, even though Vorthens did not cry often. "Thank you again for everything," Jake said to the group. "I hope our paths cross again someday." "They will," said Captain Zektar. "The galaxy is smaller than we think." Jake smiled at this. Yes, it is smaller than most people realize. He shook hands with each crew member. When he came to Captain Zektar, he held the handshake a little longer than necessary. "Captain," Jake said quietly, "I want you to know that everything you did for me was noted and appreciated. Your kindness will not be forgotten." There was something in Jake's voice that made Zektar feel uncomfortable. It sounded less like gratitude and more like a promise. But before the captain could ask what Jake meant, the human had picked up his bag and walked toward the station dot as Jake disappeared into the crowd of aliens and traders. Zektar felt that strange unease again. Something about their goodbye had felt final in a way that went beyond just one man leaving a ship. "He was a good man," said Dr. Velshi as they watched Jake go. "Yes," agreed Zektar. But he was not entirely sure that was true. 3 days after Jake left, the Silent Tide received an urgent message from Vorthen High Command. All civilian vessels were ordered to return immediately to their home systems. The message gave no details, only that there were increased security concerns in the outer territories. "What kind of security concerns?" asked Dr. Velshi. "The message does not say," replied Zektar. "But for High Command to recall all civilian ships, it must be serious." As they changed course for home, more news began to reach them. Other ships reported strange activities in distant systems. There were rumors of large fleets moving in the dark spaces between stars. Some traders spoke of systems that had gone quiet, their communication networks suddenly silent. "Pirates?" suggested Chief Engineer Korvan. "This is bigger than pirates," said Zektar. "This feels like something else entirely." A week into their journey home, they received more disturbing news. Several trade stations had reported visits from unknown military vessels. These ships were large and advanced, but they did not match any known species designs. The visitors asked many questions about local defenses and trade routes, then left without explanation. "Unknown military vessels," repeated Dr. Velshi. What species could it be? Zektar was beginning to have a terrible suspicion. The timing was too convenient. Jake had left them just days before these strange events began. And during his time aboard their ship, Jake had asked many questions about the same things these unknown ships were investigating. "Captain," said Communications. "Officer Linsa, I am receiving a general alert from the Galactic Trade Council. All ships are advised to be cautious of possible hostile activities in the Outer Rim territories." The message went on to describe the unknown ships. They were described as sleek, powerful, and technologically advanced. Their crews were reportedly humanoid, but refused to identify themselves. They seemed particularly interested in defensive capabilities and strategic locations. Zektar felt his heart sink. Humanoid crews, advanced technology, interest in defenses and strategic locations. It all pointed to one terrible conclusion. "Linsa," he said carefully, "send a private message to Vorthen Intelligence. Tell them I need to speak with them urgently about a possible security matter." "What kind of security matter?" she asked. "Tell them it is about a human we rescued 2 months ago." That night, Zektar sat in his quarters, staring at the metal sculpture Jake had given him. The bird in flight suddenly looked different to him. Instead of representing freedom, it now looked like a scout, flying ahead of a great force to map the territory. He examined the sculpture more carefully with a magnifying glass. The metalwork was indeed beautiful and detailed, but as he looked closer, he noticed something strange. There were tiny components embedded in the metal. components that looked like electronic circuits. With growing alarm, Zektar took the sculpture to Chief Engineer Corvon. "Can you scan this for electronic devices?" he asked. Corvin looked puzzled but did as requested. His scanner immediately began showing results. "Captain, this sculpture contains sophisticated electronic equipment. It appears to be some kind of transmitter and recording device. Can you tell what it has been recording? Ship systems, communications, even conversations. It has been gathering data about our entire vessel and crew." Zektar felt sick. What about the other sculptures Jake gave to the crew? They quickly gathered all the gifts Jake had left behind. Every single sculpture contained hidden electronic devices. The crew had been unknowingly carrying spy equipment in their personal quarters for weeks. "Jake was a spy," said Dr. Velji in disbelief. "But why? What did he want with our information?" "I think," said Zektar slowly, "we are about to find out." The next day brought the answer. Reports began flooding in from across the galaxy. Massive human fleets had appeared simultaneously in dozens of star systems. These were not the small groups of human traders and explorers that other species knew. These were vast armadas of warships. The humans moved with precision and purpose. They occupied strategic star systems and established military bases. They positioned themselves to control major trade routes and communication networks. It was a coordinated military operation on a galactic scale. "The humans," whispered Communications Officer Linsa as she read the latest reports. "They are taking over everything." Captain Zektar looked at the sculpture in his hands. Jake Collins had not been a simple surveyor who was attacked by pirates. He had been a military intelligence operative, gathering information for this massive invasion. The Vorthans had been played. Their natural kindness and trust had been turned into weapons against them. Every question Jake had asked, every system he had observed, every act of kindness they had shown him had been used to help plan this conquest. "What have we done?" asked Dr. Velshi. "We helped them," said Zektar bitterly. "We gave them everything. They needed to know about our defenses, our trade routes, our colonies. We welcomed a spy into our home and treated him like family." The reports continued to come in. Human fleets were not destroying planets or killing civilians. Instead, they were making demands. Join the new human alliance or face the consequences. Accept human leadership or be considered an enemy. Many species were choosing to surrender rather than fight. The human fleets were too large and too advanced to resist. It was clear that humanity had been planning this operation for years, possibly decades. "Sir," said Linsa, "we are receiving a direct communication from the human fleet. They are requesting permission to dock with our ship." Zektar's blood went cold. "Are they threatening us?" "No, sir. They say they want to talk. They say they have a message from Jake Collins." Zektar closed his eyes. He had known this moment would come. Jake had promised that their kindness would not be forgotten. Number 6 months had passed since Jake Collins left the Silent Tide. The galaxy had become a very different place. Captain Zektar sat in his quarters reading the latest reports, and each one made him feel worse about what had happened. The human conquest was unlike anything the galaxy had ever seen. It was not the brutal invasion that most species expected. Instead, it was methodical and precise. The humans knew exactly where to strike and exactly what to demand. System after system fell under human control, not through destruction, but through demonstration of overwhelming power. When human fleets appeared over a planet, they did not attack immediately. Instead, they sent a message. Join the human hegemony willingly, or face the consequences. Most species chose to join. The alternative was clearly hopeless. Zektar realized with growing horror that he recognized many of the systems being taken. They were places the silent Tide had visited while Jake was aboard. Routes they had traveled. Stations where they had stopped to trade. Every casual conversation Jake had enjoyed with the crew now seemed sinister. Every innocent question he had asked now revealed its true purpose. The human had been conducting intelligence gathering on a massive scale, and the Vorthans had helped him do it. "Captain," said Dr. Velshi as she entered his quarters, "have you seen the latest reports from the Kepler sector?" Zektar looked up from his reading. "What about it?" "3 more systems have surrendered to the humans. The interesting thing is, the human fleets knew exactly where each system's defense stations were located. They knew which planets had military bases and which were purely civilian. They avoided all unnecessary conflict. Almost like they had detailed intelligence about each system," Zektar said grimly. "Exactly like that," agreed Dr. Velshi. "Captain, I have been thinking about Jake Collins. The questions he asked, the places he wanted to visit, the way he studied everything about our ship and crew. You think he was gathering intelligence for this invasion? I think we helped them plan the conquest of our entire sector of space." The truth was becoming impossible to ignore. Jake had not been a lucky survivor of a pirate attack. He had been a military operative conducting deep reconnaissance behind enemy lines. His rescue had been perfectly timed and positioned to give him access to exactly the information humanity needed. Zektar thought about the damaged escape pod they had found. The weapons damage had seemed wrong at the time. Now he understood why. The damage had been carefully created to look like a Krillian attack, but it had actually been designed to make Jake's story believable. "There is something else," said Dr. Velshi. "I have been analyzing the electronic devices we found in Jake's sculptures. The technology is far more advanced than anything humans are supposed to have." "What do you mean?" "The quantum encryption, the miniaturization, the power systems. This technology is decades ahead of what we believed human science could produce. It suggests that humanity has been hiding their true capabilities for a very long time." This revelation made Zektar feel even worse. Not only had they been fooled by one human spy, but they had completely underestimated human civilization as a whole. Humanity had been playing a much longer game than anyone had realized. The reports continued to pour in from across the galaxy. Human fleets were not just appearing randomly. They were targeting specific strategic locations, jump points that controlled interstellar travel, communication hubs that coordinated planetary networks, resource-rich systems that powered galactic commerce. Every target made perfect sense from a military perspective. But how had the humans known which targets to choose? The answer was becoming clear. They had been gathering intelligence for years, maybe decades. Jake Collins was just one of many operatives. "Sir," said Communications Officer Linsa over the tune. "Ship's intercom. We are receiving a priority message from Vorthan High Command." "Put it through," Zektar replied. The message was from Admiral Torvik, the head of Vorthan Defense Forces. His usually calm demeanor was gone, replaced by barely controlled panic. "All Vorthan vessels, this is Admiral Torvik. We have received intelligence that suggests our entire trade network has been compromised. Human operatives have been gathering detailed information about our colonies, defenses, and resources for an extended period. Any ship that has had contact with humans in the past year must report to command immediately." Zektar felt his stomach drop. He knew they would have to report their contact with Jake Collins. But he also knew what that would mean. The Vorthans would realize that one of their own ships had unknowingly assisted in the intelligence gathering that made this conquest possible. "Captain," said Dr. Velshi quietly, "what are we going to tell them?" "The truth," Zektar replied. "We have no choice." But before he could respond to Admiral Torvik's message, another communication came through. This one was different. It came on a frequency that civilian ships were not supposed to know about. The message was brief and direct. Captain Zektar of the vessel Silent Tide. This is Fleet Admiral Jake Collins of the Human Hegemony Navy. I request permission to board your ship. I believe we have much to discuss. The bridge fell silent. Jake Collins was alive, and he was no longer pretending to be a simple surveyor. He was a fleet admiral. The implications were staggering. He wants to board our ship, said Linsa in a whisper. What should we do? Asked Dr. Velshi. Zektar thought carefully. They could refuse and try to run. But human ships were faster and more powerful than anything the Vorthans had. They could try to fight, but the Silent Tide was a trading vessel with minimal weapons. Or they could listen to what Jake had to say. Tell Admiral Collins that he has permission to board, Zektar said finally. Sir? Linsa sounded shocked. We are not a military vessel. We cannot fight a human fleet. And I want to hear what he has to say. I want to understand what we helped him do. An hour later, a sleek human shuttle docked with the Silent Tide. Jake. Collins stepped aboard, but he was no longer the injured and grateful man they had rescued. He wore the uniform of a high-ranking military officer. His bearing was confident and authoritative. 2 armed human soldiers accompanied him. The crew, gathered in the main cargo bay, where they had first brought Jake's damaged escape pod. The irony was not lost on any of them. Jake looked at each crew member in turn. His expression was serious, but not hostile. When he spoke, his voice carried the authority of command. Captain Zektar, Dr. Velshi, Chief Engineer Corvin, Communications, Officer Linsa, and the rest of the crew of the Silent Tide. I want to begin by saying that my gratitude for saving my life was genuine. You pulled me from a damaged escape pod and nursed me back to health. You treated me with kindness when you had no obligation to do so. But you were spying on us, said Dr. Velshi. Her voice was hurt and angry. Yes, Jake admitted without hesitation. I was conducting intelligence-gathering operations. Everything I learned aboard your ship was transmitted to my superiors and used in the planning of our current military operations. So our kindness was a weapon you used against us, said Captain. Zektar.Jake was quiet for a moment. In a sense, yes. But that does not mean your kindness was not real or valuable. You saved my life because you believed it was the right thing to do. That speaks well of your character and your species. Then why did you betray us? Asked Chief Engineer Corvin. Because I had a duty to my own people, Jake replied. Humanity has been watching this galaxy for decades. We have seen how species treat each other. We have seen wars, slavery, genocide, and countless acts of cruelty. We decided that the galaxy needed better leadership. So you decided to conquer it, said Dr. Velshi. We decided to take responsibility for it, Jake corrected. There is a difference. We are not destroying civilizations or enslaving populations. We are establishing order and preventing the conflicts that have plagued this galaxy for centuries. Captain Zektar stepped forward, and you used our own kindness to help you do it. We told you about our trade routes, our colonies, our defenses. We gave you everything you needed to know. You did, Jake agreed, and that information was invaluable. But I want you to understand something important. Humanity has been planning this operation for 40 years. We have operatives throughout the galaxy. We have been studying every major civilization and planning for this moment. So we were just one source among many? Asked Dr. Velshi. No, said Jake. You were much more than that. The information I gathered aboard this ship was some of the most detailed and accurate intelligence we collected. Your willingness to share your knowledge freely gave us insights that years of covert observation could not provide. The crew looked at each other with growing despair. They had not just helped with the conquest. They had been one of the most important sources of intelligence. But there is something else you need to know, Jake continued. The galaxy has changed, but it has not ended. Humanity is not interested in destroying existing civilizations. We want to improve them. The Vorthen. People have qualities that we value highly. What kind of qualities? Asked Captain Zektar suspiciously. Compassion, honesty, loyalty, and a genuine desire to help others. These are rare qualities in the galaxy. Most species we have encountered are driven by self-interest and fear. You are different. Jake gestured to his soldiers, and one of them stepped forward with a datapad. The human hegemony is offering thee. 1 year had passed since Jake Collins returned to the Silent Tide as Fleet Admiral of the human hegemony. The galaxy had changed completely during that time. What had once been a collection of independent star nations was now reorganized under human leadership. The human hegemony controlled the major trade routes and communication networks. Most species had chosen to join rather than resist. Those who had fought back had been defeated quickly and decisively. The humans had proven that their military power was even greater than their initial displays had suggested. Captain Zektar stood on the observation deck of Vorthen Prime Station, watching the stars. Soon, the Vorthen Council would make their final decision about joining the human hegemony. They had delayed as long as possible, hoping that some alternative would present itself. None had. Captain, said a voice behind him. Zektar turned to see Dr. Velshi approaching. She looked tired. The past year had been difficult for all of them. Any word from the council? He asked. They are still debating, she replied. But we both know what the decision will be. The humans have made it clear that neutrality is no longer an option. Zektar nodded. The galaxy had become divided into two groups, members of the human hegemony and enemies of the human hegemony. There was no middle ground. Do you ever wonder what would have happened if we had not rescued Jake Collins? Dr. Velshi asked. Every day, Zektar replied. But then I remember that they had other sources of information. Jake told us himself that humanity had been planning this for 40 years. Our help may have made it easier, but it would have happened anyway. Does that make you feel better? No, Zektar admitted. It just makes me feel less responsible. Their conversation was interrupted by an announcement over the station's communication system. All residents of Vorthen Prime Station, please report to the main assembly hall. The council has reached a decision. Zektar and Dr. Velshi made their way to the assembly hall along with thousands of other Vorthens. The hall was packed with people from every level of Vorthen society. Military officers stood next to civilian traders. Government officials sat beside ordinary workers. Council leader Memtar took the stage. She was an elderly Vorthen who had led their people for 20 years. Her face showed the strain of the impossible decision she had been forced to make. My fellow Vorthens, she began, we face a choice that no generation should have to make. We can maintain our independence and face the military might of the human hegemony alone. Or we can join their alliance and hope to preserve our way of life within their system. The hall was completely silent. Everyone knew what was coming. After much deliberation, the council has voted to accept membership in the human hegemony. We will maintain internal autonomy over Vorthen worlds, but we will accept human leadership in galactic affairs. There were gasps and murmurs throughout the hall. Some people looked relieved, others looked defeated. Most just looked scared about what the future would bring. The human fleet will arrive tomorrow to formalize our membership. Council leader Memtar continued. I know this is not the outcome many of you hoped for, but it is the outcome that gives our people the best chance of survival and prosperity. As the assembly dispersed, Zektar felt a mixture of sadness and resignation. The Vorthens had always prided themselves on their independence. Now that independence was gone, traded away for safety and protection. The next day, the human fleet arrived. At Vorthan Prime, it was massive beyond anything the Vorthans had ever seen. Hundreds of warships filled the space around their homeworld. The lead ship was a dreadnought called the UES Defiance, larger than most Vorthan space stations. A shuttle from the Defiance requested permission to dock with the station. On board was Fleet Admiral Jake Collins, come to formalize Vorthan membership in the human hegemony. Captain Zektar was part of the official delegation that met Jake at the docking bay. The human looked older than when they had last seen him. The responsibilities of command had changed him, but he still recognized the crew of the Silent Tide. Captain Zektar, Jake said as he stepped off the shuttle. Dr. Velshi, it is good to see you again. Admiral Collins, Zektar replied formally. Welcome to Vorthan Prime. The ceremony was held in the council chambers. Jake stood before the assembled Vorthan leadership and formally welcomed them into the human hegemony. He spoke about partnership and mutual prosperity. He promised that Vorthan culture and autonomy would be respected, but Zektar noticed something else in Jake's words. There was an underlying message of strength and control. The humans were not asking for cooperation. They were granting it as a privileged dot after the formal ceremony. Jake requested a private meeting with the crew of the Silent Tide. They gathered in the same conference room where they had first questioned Jake about his rescue. I wanted to speak with you personally, Jake began, because you represent the best of what the Vorthan people can be. Your willingness to help a stranger in need showed a compassion that is rare in the galaxy. A compassion you used against US, said Dr. Velshi. A compassion that saved your entire species from conquest, Jake replied. Because of what I learned aboard your ship, humanity classified the Vorthans as potential allies rather than subjects. That status is worth more than you know. Chief Engineer Corvin spoke up. What is the difference between an ally and a subject? Allies keep their own governments, their own laws, their own way of life, Jake explained. They contribute to the greater good of the hegemony, but they are not ruled directly by human administrators. Subjects have no such protections. And what do we contribute to this greater good? Asked Captain Zektar. Your compassion, your trading expertise, your knowledge of this sector of space, Jake replied. But most importantly, your example. Other species need to see that joining the hegemony does not mean losing everything they value. Communications Officer Linsa had been quiet throughout the meeting. Now she finally spoke. Admiral, do you ever regret what you did to us? Using our kindness to gather intelligence? Jake was quiet for a long moment. I regret that it was necessary, he said finally. But I do not regret doing my duty to my people. The galaxy is a better place now than it was before. There is less war, less suffering, less chaos. At the cost of freedom, said Dr. Velshi. At the cost of the illusion of freedom, Jake corrected. Most species in the galaxy were never truly free. They were controlled by fear, by stronger neighbors, by economic necessity. Now they are protected and provided for. Is that not a better form of freedom? Captain Zektar studied Jake's face. The human truly believed what he was saying. He genuinely thought that human rule was better for the galaxy than the old system of independent worlds. What happens now? Zektar asked. Now you help us build something better, Jake replied. The Vorthans will be given responsibility for managing trade relationships with newly inducted species. Your reputation for fairness and honesty will help ease their transition into the hegemony. So we become recruiters for human expansion? You become ambassadors for a better way of life, Jake said. You show other species that joining the hegemony does not mean losing their identity. As the meeting ended, Jake had one final message for the crew. I want you to know that your names are on a special list maintained by Hegemony Intelligence. You are designated as protected persons. No matter what happens in the galaxy, you and your families will be safe. This is my personal guarantee. Because we helped you gather intelligence? Asked Dr. Velshi. Because you saved my life, Jake replied simply. Because you showed kindness to a stranger. Because you represent the best aspects of your species. After Jake left, the crew of the Silent Tide sat in silence for a long time. They had saved one human's life and thought nothing of it. Now their entire civilization was part of a human empire. Do you think he is right? Linsa asked eventually. That the galaxy is better now? I do not know, said Captain Zektar. But I know it is different, and we helped make it different. Dr. Velshi looked out the window at the human fleet surrounding their homeworld. Sometimes I wonder if kindness is a weakness in a galaxy like this. No, said Zektar firmly. Kindness is never a weakness. It may be used against us, but that does not make it wrong. If we stop being compassionate because others might take advantage of us, then we stop being Vorthan, even if it costs us our freedom. Even then, Zektar replied, because the alternative is to become something we would not recognize. Months later, Captain Zektar received his new assignment from the human hegemony. He was to command a diplomatic vessel that would visit newly contacted species and explain the benefits of joining the hegemony. His crew would remain the same, including Dr. Velshi and the others as they prepared for their first mission. Zektar thought about how much had changed. They were still helping people, but now they were doing it under human direction. They were still exploring the galaxy, but now they were doing it to expand human influence. The Silent Tide had been refitted with human technology. It was faster, stronger, and more capable than ever before. But it was no longer truly theirs. Ready for departure, Captain, reported Linsa from her communications station. Set course for the Alterian system, Zektar ordered. Let us go introduce another species to their new human neighbors. As the Silent Tide jumped hyperspace, Captain Zeke